Hello and welcome to our channel, Marsh, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artist of Marsh by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gail Schickley, and welcome to Solo Arts Heal. Tonight, featuring actor and comedian Adam Strauss, premiering with us his new video series, The Trip Report. Adam is a favorite at the Marsh. Many of you may have seen his award-winning show, The Mushroom Cure, his true story about his attempt to treat his debilitating OCD with psychedelics. And Adam is one of the first artists to perform on this show, Solo Arts Heal, in solidarity with our core artist collective, which you may visit and book for your theater or event through soloartsheal.com. Here on the Marsh Stream, we present excerpts of shows that embrace healing, the healing power of the arts through storytelling over a wide range of mental, emotional, and physical challenges, and with talkbacks that offer insights and resources for our audiences. And tonight, Adam Strauss uses the power of drama and comedy to bring people together around the interesting and increasingly growing issue of healing through the guided use of psychedelics. That is to say, don't try this at home alone. Let me tell you about our guest. New York Times said his autobiographical monologue, The Mushroom Cure, which had its West Coast premiere at the Marsh in 2017, mines a great deal of laughter from disabling pain. The Chicago Tribune called it arrestingly honest and howlingly funny. And Time Out New York called it a true life tour de force and named it a critic's pick. Adam won the New York Fringe Festival's overall excellent award for solo performance, the Eddy Award for best solo show in San Francisco, and the Leffe Craft Your Character storytelling competition. Adam will join us right after this sneak preview of the premiere of the Trip Report video series, which explores what's happening in psychedelics right now. It's Adam Strauss's take on the current developments in this psychedelic space, including research, business, and culture. Episode 1, which runs about 10 minutes, asks, can you get the benefits of psychedelics without the actual trip? Here we go.
I'm Adam Strauss, and welcome to the Trip Report. If psychedelics have shown me anything, it's that I don't know anything with any degree of certainty because reality itself is subjective. And if you think I'm wrong, you're right. But one thing is undeniable. Psychedelics are gaining mainstream acceptance head-spinningly fast, and for good reason. A growing body of research suggests psychedelics may be uniquely effective in treating depression, addiction, PTSD, and obsessive-compulsive disorder, which I have. Can we move the pictures over a little bit? I feel like they're crowding me. Well, not that far, a little bit closer in. Perfect. But for all their benefits, you know what, just put it back to where it was. For all their benefits, psychedelics also have a major drawback. I'm not referring to an inexplicable appreciation for fish. I'm talking about the fact that psychedelics make you trip. And as psychedelics gain traction on both Main Street and Wall Street, some people see that as a massively undesirable side effect, arguably worse than this. And so a host of companies are trying to create drugs that deliver the benefits of psychedelics without the risk of feeling a deep sense of connection to the universe. Among them is MindMed Inc., a new company backed by Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, whose website invites us to call him Mr. Wonderful. Oh, thank you, Kevin. That's very generous of you. I was going to go with Dr. Awesome, but I appreciate your modesty. O'Leary says he's never used psychedelics, and frankly, I believe him, which may explain why he's chosen to invest in MindMed. Because MindMed is developing 18MC, which sounds like an 80s hip-hop artist, but is actually a new drug based on iboga, a very powerful psychedelic derived from an African shrub that research has shown can be effective in treating opiate addiction. MindMed's hoping 18MC will yield similar results without the actual trip, which with iboga tends to be a harrowing, though often ultimately redemptive 20-plus hours of tripping absolute balls. But what if you're already tripping balls? Well, not to worry, because MindMed's also working on something called Lsd Neutralizer technology. While that may sound like a selling point in a late-night infomercial, it's a drug that will terminate a psychedelic experience if it becomes too uncomfortable. And MindMed is hardly alone in trying to take the hallucinations out of hallucinogens. In fact, even the government is getting in on the lack of fun. In a bid to address a mounting mental health crisis among war veterans, the U.S. military recently announced a $27 million project to create drugs that are similar to psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, but without what they call its disabling side effects, including hallucinations. Personally speaking, I would much rather contend with that so-called side effect than the ones for all the psychiatric medications I took for OCD before I began using psychedelics, which include anxiety, insomnia, sleepiness, weakness, sweating, bleeding, constipation, weight gain, diarrhea, loss of appetite, erectile dysfunction, and, perhaps not surprisingly, increased risk of suicide. Moreover, research suggests that the psychedelic experience itself, even when uncomfortable, is integral to psychedelics' benefits. And there's a particular type of psychedelic experience that seems especially beneficial: the full mystical experience. It's sometimes referred to as ego death, the realization that the separate self is an illusion and that ultimately all is one. Now, this sounds hopelessly unscientific, but researchers at Johns Hopkins have developed something called the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, or MEQ. The MEQ asks psychedelic research subjects whether they experience things such as fusion of your personal self into a larger whole, unity with ultimate reality, and eternity or infinity. Subjects who express strong agreement with at least 60% of the questions on the MEQ are deemed to have had a full mystical experience, and these people seem changed. Even 6 months later, they show marked increases in life satisfaction, positive mood, and prosocial traits like empathy and altruism. In other words, the full mystical experience doesn't just make people feel better, it makes them better people. But subjects who fall short of the full mystical experience as measured on the MEQ don't see these same benefits. If only there were some way to boost people's MEQ scores. Well, thanks to today's sponsor, there is.
Dude, a popular DJ is spinning at a trendy local night spot. It's gonna be off the hook.
I've got to study.
But you're always studying.
Well, my MEQ is next week. If I ace it, my dad's gonna buy me a new Tesla.
Sweet.
But who am I kidding? I can't even grasp the concept of non-duality. I'm just gonna have to keep driving my current Tesla. I mean, it doesn't even have autopilot. Don't get discouraged. Get me quipped. Me quipped? That's right. Me quipped is the leading mystical experience questionnaire test prep company. We've helped thousands of people score higher on their MEQ. Our methods are safe, simple, and effective. And the results speak for themselves. Clients see an average 30% increase on MEQ score, positioning them for satisfying and lucrative careers as psychedelic guides, spiritual gurus, and tech disruptors. So go cut a rug at that trendy night spot, Chad. Before you know it, you'll be one with the universe and that sweet new Model S. And who knows? Maybe Lord Big Dick McGenius is right, and 18MC will effectively treat opiate addiction. Perhaps the military's attempts to take the fun out of fungi will yield trip-free treatments for traumatized troopers. But even if this approach works, and that's a big if, I don't think it's enough. Because why do psychedelics exist? Why are there hundreds of plants and fungi flourishing in nearly every corner of the globe that induce these singularly transformative experiences? And why are humans even capable of having these experiences and, it seems, have been having them since the dawn of our species? Clearly, there's adaptive value. And not just for the person who trips. Because when you experience that all is one, you care a little bit less about this particular one and more about the all. And for our ancient ancestors facing omnipresent existential threats like predation and starvation, that increased empathy and altruism may have been precisely what enabled them to band together and survive as a tribe. But now we're facing new threats that could destroy our entire species, terrifying things that we've created like environmental destruction and nuclear annihilation and Facebook. These evils are far too great for any one of us to defeat on our own. Once again, we need to come together to survive. Once again, we need the deep knowledge that we truly are all one. At this moment in history, the psychedelic experience itself may be the medicine we need, not just for individual healing, but for collective salvation.
All is one. Having a bad trip? Relax. LSD Neutralizer technology is here. For just 3 easy payments of $19.95, MindMed's patent-pending LSD Neutralizer technology is guaranteed to put a quick stop to your difficult, if potentially liberating, psychedelic journey before you can say time is an illusion. But don't take our word for it. Listen to our satisfied customers. LSD Neutralizer technology. Oh girl, you don't have to make no apology for putting an end to your trip. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Sometimes we just need to get a grip on this thing that we call reality. No need to penetrate non-duality.
Yeah, that's a good one. Letting out all my aggression.
Yeah.
Here, that's purple enough.
That's purple enough, you think? Yeah, that's pretty purpley.
Yeah.
Neutralizer technology, give me that sweet neutralizer technology, give me that sweet neutralizer technology, give me that sweet neutralizer technology.
Have a pleasant trip.
I love that. Congratulations. What a wonderful sneak preview. Thank you so much for sharing that. My goodness, like so many characters. It's fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Adam. Adam Strauss. So glad to have you here. It's really nice to see you. And Kevin Leary, any relation to Timothy?
It's O'Leary.
O'Leary.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think we even talked about this. I tried to. I did have a joke about how Timothy Leary is, turning over in his bardo about his near namesake's desecration of. But I couldn't quite make the joke fit in with this episode. So, but yes, no relation so far as I know.
So this neutralizer technology. Is it just for LSD or is it for other?
Well, I think this speaks to, I'm sorry, for some reason, we did a tech rehearsal and you were totally clear and now I can barely hear you. So I'm sure it's like on my phone, but anyway, I'm sure it's on my end. Don't worry about it. But you asked the neutralizer technology. Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to the strategy that so essentially the psychedelic space was, brief capsule history. This was, LSD was invented and patented by a pharmaceutical firm, Sandoz, and
When was that? In the 40s?
It was, well, so it was discovered, I believe it was 43 or 44, and it came into widespread use, very widespread use in the 50s into the mid 60s. Then of course it came out in the counterculture, and there was this massive backlash. And there was, despite the fact that there were over 3,000 peer-reviewed journal articles published on LSD alone in the roughly 15 years that it was, sanctioned and legally researched. And it was, I mean, it's incredible how this has been sort of swept under the rug. Of course, now it's reemerging, but this was the wonder drug for psychiatry.
Right. I knew that Hollywood, it was big in Hollywood, and people like Cary Grant said it saved his life, changed his life.
It was the thing that people, it wasn't, not everyone did it, but it was not only was it accepted, but it was actually, it was something that was considered, and rightfully so, a useful and potentially invaluable tool in people's journeys of healing. And so this was, there was no other single intervention in psychiatry that received even a fraction of the research support and interest in academic research and journal articles published as LSD alone, let alone psilocybin and other psychedelics. And what's remarkable is that when the hammer fell, it fell incredibly swiftly and with incredible finality. So it was, and in fact, there was, I believe, was it JFK or RFK spoke out against the fact that this whole, immediately this stuff was going to be banned, not just banned for, personal use, but banned, and not just banned for medical use, but actually banned to even research. So this was considered suddenly so dangerous that you can't even let researchers work with it. And I can't remember if it was RFK or JFK, but one of them spoke out, and there were a number of politicians who said this is madness. Clearly, yes, this stuff needs to be regulated, it needs to be controlled. We can't have this totally flourishing, unregulated underground drug scene, which, by the way, I might beg to differ with that, but let's grant that point. But the fact is, this stuff has shown, is whoever it was, had a great quote. I don't remember the exact quote, but the quote was, if this stuff was so, if there was so much evidence of this stuff's, clinical utility 6 months ago, that hasn't disappeared. So why are we banning even research? But, and there's we could get into a lot of detail on this, but clearly the war on, a lot of it was tied up with Vietnam, with the realization that a lot of the same people who were protesting Vietnam and opposing Nixon, because this passed under Nixon, were also people who were involved in this counterculture and using LSD. So you can't, unfortunately, so far as Nixon was concerned, you can't send people to jail for protesting a war, but you can send them to jail suddenly, once this stuff was banned, for possessing a tiny fraction of a milligram of this suddenly demonized chemical. So that was really a lot of what was behind it. I think part of it was also the fact that this stuff is inherently, it makes you question authority, I'd say. It makes you question everything. I think that's one of the signature effects of psychedelics. And I think one of the ways in which they're integral, one of the ways in which they work with healing is by making you question these ingrained assumptions of, oh, the world is this way. I'm a depressed person. I had, I view my past in a certain way. I view my future possibilities in a certain limited way. And under the influence of a psychedelic, you can see that, oh, all these things that I thought were givens, that I thought were just objective truth, are actually really choices that I'm making and how I see the world and how I behave in the world. So anyway, I'm getting into a little bit of ranty territory here, but you asked about LSD neutralizer technology. So to bring us up to the present, this stuff was completely shut down. You couldn't even research it, which is itself a tragedy in that we had basically, the first study that then started up again, I believe, was 2004 of DMT by Rick Strassman. I could be slightly off on the dates, but really research didn't really get humming along. Even today, there's a lot of studies going on today, but it's a small fraction of the number of studies that was happening in 1965. So we've lost, 50 plus years of research. And in that 50 years, you look around, mental suffering has undoubtedly increased. I don't think the world is certainly a better place in some ways, but in many ways it clearly isn't. So I feel like, not that I'm saying psychedelics are the single key to human evolution and health and functioning, but I do think they are a key, and one that, to our great detriment, we locked away for 50 years. So I'm still going to answer your question. LSD neutralizer technology. So nonprofits stepped into the void, most notably MAPS, who conflict of interest statement, I suppose. They sponsor the mushroom cure.
Tell us about MAPS.
Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. They were founded over 30 years ago. In fact, soon after MDMA was banned, Rick Doblin founded MAPS.
In 1986, I believe.
Yep, something like that. Founded MAPS specifically to try to advance psychedelic medicine, which was a pretty ballsy move considering that it had just been banned. And it's been a decades-long fight. But he and I mean, I'm going to give him a lot of the credit because he has been a driving force of MAPS. Now MAPS is a fairly, now it has over 100 people there. But he and other people joining with him really tirelessly worked. And they also, MAPS, along with an organization called Hefter, came a little bit later, and Beckley Research Institute.
What is Hefter?
Hefter, Heffer, and Beckley out of the UK. These were really the only organizations that were doing any sort of funding for psychedelic research. The drug companies didn't want to touch it for obvious reasons. The obvious reason being the illegality, the less obvious reason being that you can't patent this stuff. Academic funders generally, wanted to stay away. So they were the only people who were touching this. And now what's happened is, sorry?
You said you can't patent this stuff?
Right. So something like psilocybin, the main psychoactive compound in magic mushrooms.
I see.
It's a naturally occurring compound. You can't patent it, which hasn't stopped people from trying. So getting around to your question, so as this these nonprofits funded this research, and this research started showing amazing promise, then people in the commercial side of things, then their ears or their dollar signs, whatever, started perking up and saying, wait a second. Wow, this stuff looks really effective. Maybe there's some money to be made here. And so what we're seeing now in the space is, interestingly, the big pharma companies still haven't waded into this fully. So what's happening is there's a lot of essentially startups who are jumping into the space and trying to commercialize this. And their general approach, unfortunately, and I'm not against commercialization of this. I don't want to get too far afield, but what has happened with these companies thus far is what they're really trying to do is patent anything they could potentially patent and use that to raise a lot of money from investors. And they've tried to patent psilocybin full stop. They've patented things that have been in prior art, meaning stuff that has been used, processes that have been used for psychedelic therapy for decades. They're trying to patent. So this LSD neutralizer technology is, my understanding is, it's not necessarily, I can't remember the name of a chemical, but it's something that has been used, known to science for a long time. And
so it's going to make a lot more people interested in doing it, those people that might have the fear of doing it. And we'll get into the fact that, the fact that they're missing out on the main component that probably helps the people heal. But I want to ask you,
well, sorry, just to answer the question, because I've given such a long wind up. So you asked, is LSD neutralizer technology specifically for LSD? No, not at all. It's this, again, I can't remember the name of the drug, but it's something that potentially could have a similar effect on other psychedelics. It's not a particularly novel drug. It's more of a blunt instrument approach that I'm skeptical whether it will even do what it's supposed to do, which is terminate these difficult psychedelic experiences. And then I think, as you were going to say, I also question the utility of that, even if it does work.
Right. And I want to get into that, but I wanted to say that, what is it with cannabis, CBD, or I always get CBD. Yeah. So it's kind of like trying to create, something similar to the cannabis, where they have a whole nother aspect of marketing. the companies that
Yes.
are getting involved in a way. So,
Sorry, I'm trying to tweak something. I think I realized why I can barely hear you. And as I suspected, it is entirely on my end. And I'm trying to.
okay, and that's fine. We'll make it so you can
There
hear.
we go. All right, fixed it. There we go. Good.
I
Good.
love
Good.
that you talk about the government's getting in on the lack of fun.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And the Johns Hopkins MEQ, I love the MEQ. It's Mystical Experience Questionnaire.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
So when was that? When did that all start?
So I believe they first unveiled that. They had a study about, it has a great title. The title is, it's a long-winded title of the study, but it's Psilocybin Reliably Occasions Mystical Experiences in, I think, like healthy volunteers. And what they found was giving people psilocybin, and not a clinical population, but they reliably had these mystical experiences. But of course, the question is, what is a mystical experience? I mean, one of the cool things about Hopkins, other research institutes too, but I'd say they've paved the way for this more than anyone else, is they're grappling with this stuff that, okay, we're trying to measure these experiences that are, certainly we want to measure objective correlates. We want to measure reduction in depression scores. We want to measure, people who stop smoking, things like that. But we also want to measure these subjective experiences, but we want to do it in a way that has some scientific validity and rigor. And so they've come up with these various instruments and tools. And one of them is the Mystical Experience Questionnaire. And yeah, you can find it online.
Oh God, MEQ. It's very interesting just to even have a questionnaire like that. Like, who came up with that? But I guess the whole idea coming down to is that, as you say in your trip report, that the full mystical experience, is what is the healing component, very, ostensibly for and used widely for PTSD. In fact, we were talking earlier, just 2 days ago in the New York Times, there's a big article about the efficacy of the use of psychedelics in specifically for PTSD and to help many mental health conditions: substance abuse, eating disorders, depression, OCD, end of life anxiety, and social anxiety in autistic adults is one of the things that it mentioned.
Yeah.
So that the studies could encourage additional research on other banned psychedelics, like you said, mescaline and psilocybin. Yeah.
Well, right, LSD. There's a little bit there is a little bit happening in Switzerland, but yeah, I think LSD is still more of a political hot potato, I would say, than psilocybin and mushrooms. And I think part of it comes down to the fact that LSD was and is so strongly identified with the 60s counterculture.
Right.
And then I think part of it comes down to the fact that, there's many people have a belief that, well, if something is naturally occurring, it's somehow safer, which I don't necessarily think is true. But yeah, most of the research thus far, as you said, has been MDMA, which of course is not naturally occurring. That's ecstasy, though ecstasy often is adulterated, and psilocybin from mushrooms.
Yeah,
so
and I
think we'll see more.
Pardon me. I did want to clarify that New York Times article specifically talks about the new study shows that MDMA, which is known as ecstasy or Molly, can bring relief when paired with talk therapy to those with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. So again, it isn't something you just want to go out and do if you're suffering some of these conditions, which so many people are for different reasons, and so. It is important to have a therapist and to do it, in conjunction with that. But it's proving to be quite effective. And in fact, for the majority of people that took place in the study, it was quite successful. They did a study with using a placebo, and those people became very healthy and well, and the people on the placebo, didn't.
Well, it's interesting. The study, though, the people on the placebo still improved because there is a heavy therapy component, as you mentioned. I think it's important
I see.
Yeah, that this is not, the studies that are happening now are not psychedelics. They're psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Okay.
And I think this is one of the advantages. Again, I think it's a tragedy that research completely paused for 55, 50, 52, whatever years. I think it was 1969 when it was finally banned. But one good thing is the research that's happening now, to be clear, it is higher quality research, better designed studies. And one of the things that is, I mean, there were studies in the 60s where it was like, give alcoholics massive doses of LSD and strap them to their beds. And some of them got cured, and some of them had horrific experiences, as you'd expect. So it's a more humane and more integrated approach now, for sure.
Well, yeah, the war on drugs, that was the political war on drugs, and something that I studied when I was in journalism school.
Oh yeah.
It's talked about as yeah. So that it's just so amazing. There's a lot to talk about. I want to take one quick moment to remind our wonderful audience that there's a tip jar, and the Marsh is making no ticket sales. We offer all this programming to you for free, and hope you are enjoying it as much as we do. So please do contribute whatever you can. It's much appreciated at this time.
And I'll also make a little plug for the Marsh, which is, as Gail mentioned in my intro, the Marsh had the West Coast premiere of the Mushroom Cure, which I was grateful for that. But I'll also say that the Marsh I've had a couple of other shows. The Mushroom Cure, it was already a show. It had played in New York. And again, I was very grateful for the Marsh to host it. They did a wonderful job. They got great audiences, but what's impressed me even more, and I think really speaks to what makes the Marsh unique, because I think other theaters might have hosted the Mushroom Cure, but I think other theaters would not have done what the Marsh did subsequently, which they've allowed me to bring several shows there that were really work in progress shows, and allowed me to do them in front of their audience, which is, as a performer, is invaluable. That's the way I develop shows. But it's rare to have a theater that will support audiences to that degree, to say, yeah, we're willing to take a chance on something we haven't even seen because we want to support you as an artist, and because we believe that the art, that solo theater is important enough that we want to be part of this process. And there are theaters in New York that do that are tiny theaters that 30-person theaters, but for the Marsh to do that, where they have they have 4 different theaters, including the Cabaret space in Berkeley. Mm-hmm. That's unique, and I really think
And that's what the Marsh does. They develop shows. They have wonderful, David Ford is a director, and others. You can see on Monday Night Marsh that are stories that are in progress, shows that are in progress that are just really, really marvelous. And you can take classes with David Ford. There's such an incredible offering of things at the Marsh Theater, including youth theater. So it really is a community platform that has risen to the occasion, especially with this pandemic and with the Marsh stream, with daily programming. So I'm really glad that you said that, because the Marsh really deserves all of the great credit for its wonderful work and all the performers that it's brought, that tour the world now with their show.
And the other thing, my last little kudos to the Marsh, is they really, I think, because it's just a well-oiled machine, a very friendly, personal machine, but because the Marsh has been doing this for decades, which, by the way, is also, first of all, the Marsh, to my knowledge, in New York, there's no solo theater. Though, you can do solo theater at different theaters, so it's a unique organization in being so dedicated. But also, they do it really well. So they take everything off the artist's plate. They have a PR team. They obviously have a loyal audience. So it's just a great pleasure and a privilege as an artist to be able to go in and work with people who are so totally committed to the art and really just want you to do the best art you can do and take everything off your plate. So this has obviously been uniquely and unprecedentedly challenging for the Marsh. So please give them as much money as you possibly can, and watch other shows too. So that's and plug, but I did want to get that in.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Hal asks, if the Mushroom Cure will come back and where can it be seen. So it will be coming back to the Marsh. In fact,
Yes.
weren't you supposed to have a run right when the pandemic hit?
Yeah. We'd already printed up posters. I mean, I'm laughing. It's just because the timing was, not that it was a great tragedy in the context of so many greater tragedies in this pandemic, but the timing, I think we were supposed to open March 20th, I want to say. I think it was literally like,
that week.
Yeah. So yeah, I and the Marsh are eager to restart, soon. Obviously it's challenging for theaters to figure out when to reopen. Just because they're allowed to reopen, there's a lot of moving parts, but
there is.
Yeah. As soon as it's viable.
Right. I'd love to talk about the Mushroom Cure for a minute. First of all, I want to say, when you, in the introduction, I had some quotes there, but Michael Pollan said, brilliant, hilarious, and moving. And Michael Pollan, who's written his book, what's the title of his book on psychedelics?
It's a great title, How to Change Your Mind. And then there's a long subtitle that I can never remember. It's like The New Science of Psychedelics is, yes. And I will say, I can say it. So Michael Pollan has seen this. And this video, I sent him an earlier draft, and
terrific,
and was very supportive, and said to tell him, as soon as I put it up, he'll help spread the word. So,
very good. And so you're going to be doing these, you think, monthly?
That is as I told, when I first came up with the concept, I thought it would take me 2 weeks to knock this out, and honestly, I could have knocked it out a lot sooner. It's been. Part of it is the learning curve. I've never edited a video before. I've never done graphic design before. There's all these new skills I've had to learn for this. Initially, I had a team I was working with. You saw, I don't know if you noticed in the thank yous, Kirk Bettinen, a really brilliant Bay Area director, was going to direct this. And I was Hamilton Morris, who's in the psychedelic space, was my co-anchor. And we had a few other people acting out the sketches. And then, for various reasons, I had to leave SF. The pandemic got worse. I wound up doing this all solo. So that has made it take a lot longer. But yeah, my aim at this point is monthly if I'm doing it alone. But I'm also, the hope is that that I won't be doing this alone. That I'll be able to get other people working with me, and that there'll be some interest from a platform that could distribute this.
Particularly difficult doing such, there was so much in that video, but when you have OCD, it must be.
Yes. Yeah. No, this project has been a humbling OCD exposure for me in a lot of ways. And I never really realized how liberating live performance is, because I can certainly be perfectionistic about live performance. I mean, you've seen me, I sometimes get off stage and I'm unhappy with how the performance went. But when I'm on stage, I got to do the show, even if I'm feeling like, all right, I'm not happy with how this is going. I feel like I'm not really in the moment. Or sometimes I get bothered by external things, the light is too bright, or the angle is, that stuff can be going through my head. One nice thing about the Mushroom Cure is, even if that kind of seeps out a little bit, if the audience can tell something is bothering me, well, it fits in with what I'm portraying. But the beauty of live performance is, I do the show, even if I'm having sometimes some intrusive thoughts, and then I get off stage, and sometimes I'm annoyed for an hour, but then I forget about it. Whereas this, when I'm doing it entirely on my own, this is embarrassing, but I did over 100 takes of the newsroom stuff. I probably did 30 or 40 takes of every one of those sketch scenes. I mean, this was months of filming and refilming, because there was, I just had to go into my living room and start the camera. And so, I guess to be totally honest, I would say there was, OCD definitely, perfectionism and OCD definitely delayed putting this together. Significantly. I think there's an element of perfectionism that is helpful in art, and then there's an element where it's like, dude, no one is going to notice if the shadows, the drop shadows I have behind the pictures in the picture are 40% opacity or 50% opacity, but I spent an entire day comparing that. So
Well,
this is who I am, and yeah.
I know I've worked with you for a long time, and I appreciate. I mean, you are a perfectionist, and I'm always like, okay, just you're always going to write your own thing, and you always are very you're very efficient, and also you do a lot. You also have a podcast called Not Therapy. You've done some 20 episodes over this last year, isn't it?
Yeah. I wouldn't. It's funny you call me efficient. I mean, this is one of my laments. Is I feel very inefficient because I don't want to say waste time, but it probably is waste time in that I can get caught up with a lot of. I think in one way the pandemic has been challenging for me, and I'm appreciating this from a place of self-compassion, is I never realized how structure helps me a lot. So in ordinary times, I'm doing shows. When I'm in New York, I do shows every night, stand up. I'm not doing necessarily the Mushroom Cure or solo show every night, but I'm usually doing stand up every night, multiple shows a night. And then I'm doing, a couple of solo shows a week. In SF, the same thing. I do stand up most nights. I'm not at the Marsh. So I have this structure where even if I feel like there's some sense of efficiency, like, all right, I'm doing that, at least I'm getting that done. And without that, I really have spent a lot of time on stuff that, candidly, looking at this finished product, I could have had it be 98% as good as it was in probably 1/3 of the time. And very few people are going to notice the extra 2%. Mm-hmm. I barely notice it. So.
But you are very reliable, and you work, I know I can always count in working with you and producing showcases and so on over the years at APAP. And, you're I really appreciate working with you.
Likewise. And I do want to give a shout out to you specifically. You were, went by fast, but in the credits,
thank you.
You were listed, deservedly so, because you were someone who, in this process, I mean, this was months ago when I was like, oh, I'm probably, I'll probably release this in 2 or 3 days. I'm just making final tweaks. And this was, again, months ago, but you watched numerous, when I was like, take 99 better or take 100, and you patiently watched them and gave. It
wasn't quite that bad, but yes, I enjoyed it all. I want to ask you about a couple of things, because goodness, the time is flying by, and I want to make sure we get in talking about things. And one of that is when you were one of the first shows that we had for Solo Arts Heal, and doing an excerpt from the Mushroom Cure, and we had a talk back with the founder of the Psychedelic magazine Double Blind, Madison Marble, and also Danielle Negrin, who's the executive director of the San Francisco Psychedelic Society. Could you tell us something about either of those, like maybe the San Francisco Psychedelic Society, to start with that?
Yeah. They're so that it was an organization that started, I don't even know when it started, but maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And then unfortunately, the original founder, and I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but Daniel Jabor, I believe, passed away tragically. And it was kind of the whole SF Psychedelic Society was kind of on hiatus for a while, but they've done a wonderful.
Passed away from psychedelics?
No, not from psychedelics.
Okay, that's important to state. Yeah.
Yes.
If somebody's asking in the question, do you still take psychedelics, and which ones do you think of macro dosing? So anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I want to get these questions. But anyway, SF Psychedelic Society, they've done Danielle, and now there's a whole team there. They've done a really great job. Just this, they offer courses, they offer a lot of free, I should say this, I do an OCD and psychedelic support group. It's the second Monday. So it's actually this coming Monday. Yeah, this coming Monday.
And how does one learn about that? How does one get involved?
If you go to the SF Psychedelic Society Instagram page or their website, I usually post about it. So that's free. So they offer all these free sort of healing resources for people working with psychedelics. And then Double Blind is, they're great. They're a relatively new magazine dedicated to psychedelics. So yeah, it was an honor having both Madison and Danielle doing that talk back.
Great. And I'm sorry, that question was about microdosing, not macro. So
I've not found microdosing helpful particularly. Many people do. For me, microdosing is kind of, it's sort of the worst of both worlds. I tend to get the anxiety that I often get on psychedelics in the earlier stages of a psychedelic trip, but I don't get, nearly the same level of epiphany or emotional release. So, but yeah, I mean, I think this speaks to the fact that this stuff, certainly anything you put in your body, it's going to be different for different people. But psychedelics, I'd say especially so, seem to be very idiosyncratic. They work for different people or don't work for different people in different ways.
And we do want to encourage, people listening, there's a lot of information out there right now. It's a lot of very good and positive information, and where this is very helpful. I know that there's a study going on at the University of San Francisco. There's clinical trials happening all over the country. And, but again, therapy, is a part of the program. It's like, don't run out and just go, especially if you're suffering from any of these elements, PTSD or ailments, I should say, then it is important to have therapy and have guided experiences. And the SF Psychedelic Society is a very good place to start. It's been posted in the chat. Where else? Oh, I wanted to ask you too. You said you can, I noticed you can be conveniently stalked or blocked at Adam Strauss. What is the ATOM Strauss?
Oh, I wasn't fast enough, so I don't have the social handles with my actual name. So it's
so those are the social handles. That's your for social.
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at Instagram and Twitter. Facebook, it's different, but I shouldn't be too hard to find. So
no,
yes.
Great. Yeah. I just want to make sure that we get that up there.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Let's see.
Right, I saw some other questions pop up. I know someone I saw asked about Islet Waldman's book. Yeah,
yes.
we actually did a talk back with her when I was doing the mushroom tour in Berkeley. And so I did read the book a few years ago, and yeah, I mean, she's an example of someone who it seemed like her experience was that microdosing was absolutely life-changing and possibly life-saving. So to be clear, I'm not saying microdosing isn't useful or helpful, but it hasn't been for me. I'm not sure exactly why. I know many people who have found it helpful. I will say, it's, this is what I'd say. There's very little research on microdosing. There's a lot of research on what we could call macrodosing or full doses. There's almost no research on microdosing. Now there's a little bit of research, but there's not been like peer-reviewed, double-blind studies of microdosing. So, but anecdotal data clearly shows that it can be very helpful for some people. And Islet seems like she was one of those people.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And there's another book was brought up. It was the same book. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Good. And our producer Kristen just posted the Adam Strauss Instagram and all of that for everyone. Very good.
Thank you.
Obviously, I'm not as good at some of the social media handles to have recognized that's what it was. So, great. I just love the episode. I'm really looking forward to more, and I love how you put it all together, and it was a lot of information there, but very funny, and all the characters that you did.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what your next topic is going to be?
I do. I don't want to say too much about it, but yes, the next one is also. I don't anticipate all these being about the commercialization aspects, but the next one is also about the commercialization stuff, and specifically about one company in particular that has been especially aggressive in their patent strategy and in preventing other people from doing research that they were doing even before this company existed by very, very aggressively using a patenting strategy. So there is a desire to call out some of what I see as, I would say bad actors, or certainly not on the up and up, but they're also, then the episode after that, which I've not written. So the next episode I have written, the one after that I've not written, but I'm anticipating it being more of a um, historical, or rather, some of the history of psychedelics, because I think it's useful for people to be aware of that, partially so that because I think it's kind of amazing to me, but it shouldn't be, because again, this stuff was so completely suppressed. I mean, the war on drugs was not effective at eradicating illicit drug use, but it was very effective at driving stuff underground. And psychedelics, it actually was quite effective. And I think that speaks to the fact that, there's been, untold billions, hundreds of billions of dollars probably spent on trying to eradicate cocaine, and it hasn't been effective, or heroin, it hasn't been that effective because these drugs do have addictive potential. Psychedelic use really did dramatically decline when it was banned, because this stuff is not addictive. So people are not going to go to the same lengths to get it. So anyway, it's interesting to me that there's a lot of people who really don't realize this history. I mean, they may know that, oh yeah, the LSD was banned, but the whole story of, even from the discovery of LSD, is fascinating. So I want to explore some of that in future episodes as well.
Oh, good. I would think, why doesn't LSD have a patent? I mean, it was actually.
LSD is, I believe the patent is still held by Sandoz. Well, actually, because I think patent protection, it might have expired. I think patents are 75 years, but no, wait, patents are, they're not 75 years for, because I know, for example, I don't know what the patent term is, but I'm guessing it has expired by now.
Okay. Yeah. I would imagine you'd want to hold on to that patent, but who would have known that what happened, except that cannabis now has been legalized widely in North America, and that makes a difference, I think, of how people are looking at the use of drugs and to relieve anxiety, and for different reasons.
Definitely
pros and cons for anything. Let's see, from Hal, what do you think of cities legalizing magic mushrooms and other psychedelics?
Yeah, so to be clear, not to be too pedantic here, maybe this is a little bit of the OCD specificity. No one has legalized mushrooms. There's been various degrees of decriminalizing it. Though now in Oregon, there is, that new psilocybin initiative does provide some legal framework. But I mention that because I don't want people to think that, oh, we're already achieving the goal, or, not that I assume that's everyone's goal, but for me, I believe that yes, to me, the goal is legalization. I mean, certainly a degree of regulation. This isn't something that you can just, buy as easily as you can buy, a pack of potato chips. But yeah, in terms of cities taking the lead, again, I mean, Oakland was one of the first, and a lot of the credit there goes to the SF Psychedelic Society. I think it's great. I think it's, this is, harkening back to what Gail just said about marijuana, in some ways providing the template for this. This is what we've seen there too, where at the federal level, remember, at the federal level, marijuana is still a Schedule I drug. Which means it is considered by the federal government to have no medical value and to have high degree of addiction potential. So what we've seen is, in places like initially, Colorado, and now a ton of places, states and cities taking the lead, and now we're seeing that with mushrooms and other naturally occurring psychedelics. Yeah, I think I love it. I think it's kind of a daring move in some way for these city councils to pass this, but I think it's necessary to kind of, hopefully, maybe not force the federal government's hand, but it does in a little bit of a way, because there is this increasing tension with cannabis, where, all right, it's legal all over the place, but yet federally it's still Schedule I. Something has to give, and hopefully that will be a similar, will have a similar effect with psychedelics, where as more and more municipalities decriminalize it, that leads to federal loosening.
Right. And pros and cons of the commercialization of that in terms of what the, the purity of the drug may be lost in cases. And as you say, just like with neutralization too, I mean, how things could change with commercialization and some of these discoveries or these inventions, so it's interesting. One asks, do you, Trigel Stuber asks, do you know about the Jewish Psychedelic Summit that was just held?
Yes, I'm actually part of it. But so they're doing an ongoing thing with videos that are being released, and we're going to be doing one shortly on the connections between. I'm laughing because I'm not exactly sure what this panel will be like, but I'm going to be doing a panel with a couple of other Jewish comedians who are also psychedelic enthusiasts about the connections between Judaism, psychedelics, and comedy.
Oh, that's wonderful. And how can we see that?
Yeah, so we're still working out the details of dates, whether it's going to be a YouTube live thing or it's going to be filmed. I want to do a live thing so that we have an opportunity for people to submit questions. But I will, I'd say probably Instagram is, if you follow me or check my Instagram account regularly, I will certainly be posting it there. It'll probably be sometime in the next 10 days or so, I'm guessing.
Excellent. We'll definitely look for that. Adam, it's time for us to close. Do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to say?
No, well, I just want to thank people for coming out to this thing. And I haven't looked at the chat, but I will, because I always like seeing. And yeah, you guys were the we're sort of the guinea pig audience. I've screened this for a few other places, so I appreciate you watching this. I will say, yes, the final, what you saw is essentially the final version. I'm still making some final tweaks. So that will be released. I think I'm probably releasing it Monday at this point. So that'll be on my Instagram and YouTube. And yes,
we'll
and
see
please share it if you like it.
We'll see your final edit in the when it posts on the Marsh stream. So you had said you'd forward that to the producer, and Kristen will take that. So Adam Strauss, thank you so much for tonight's sneak preview of the Trip Report, and look for upcoming episodes along with Adam's podcast, Not Therapy, and his stand-up solo shows, The Mushroom Cure and more at adamstrauss.com. And on the Marsh Stream YouTube platform at themarsh.org, where you'll be able to see this show and others. And I do want to announce that next week, Solar Arts Heal presents Laura Jane Bailey in The Paris Effect, the story of a young woman who falls in love with Paris, later bringing her husband to the City of Lights, only to have things take a terrible turn with the couple barely making it out of the city alive. So be sure next week to join us in Solar Arts Heal for Laura Jane Bailey in The Paris Effect. So with thanks again to Adam Strauss, Marsh Stream producers Kristen Scheel and Brianna Caver, general manager Brian Williamson, and always artistic director Stephanie Wiseman, and to our Zoom and YouTube audiences, we're all in this together. Thank you all. See you next week.